I do think that a lot of organizations do hoard in terms of hanging on to long since outdated and unused processes.
Business is messy and unpredictable.
Sometimes lonely.
So lonely.
So lonely.
And inspiration can often come from really weird places.
We pick up where the bullet point blogs and the highlight reels leave off.
We start with the stories.
So here's my story. As I think I've mentioned at some point along the way, I sing in a band. And we've had quite a number of outdoor gigs this fall. We haven't done any indoor gigs since COVID, but one of our outdoor gigs is a place that we have always played outdoors, which is in Ellicott City. And it was last Friday, and they called us on Wednesday or sent John a message or something that said, "Oh, by the way, we forgot to mention this whole weekend is Ellicott City's big community fundraiser or something." I don't know. Apparently they do it every year.
Oh, okay.
And oh, by the way, it's Harry Potter themed. So if you could dress,
or just the bar?
No, not just the bar, like the whole town for the whole weekend. It's a Harry Potter, which is pretty cool for Ellicott City. If you've never been there, it's this, it's a tiny town in Maryland, like basically built into the side of stone, like everything's stone, and it's built into stone, and there's big, huge bouldery rocks between buildings and stone steps that are carved. It's just a really neat little old town.
Was the bar serving butterbeer?
They actually were serving butterbeer, Ellie.
I assume they would have to.
She said last year when they did this, or I guess maybe they skipped COVID, I'm not sure. But the last time they did it, in those 2 days, they went through 75 gallons of milk making butterbeer.
Wow.
Which I actually didn't realize butterbeer is it has a lot of milk in it. I didn't make that connection. I have no idea.
I just know from the books. I didn't.
Okay, this is not my story. So we are meandering here.
You don't want to go into a recipe for butterbeer?
No? I don't know a recipe for butterbeer. So unless you want to Google one while I tell the rest of the story.
I'm sorry that you came so ill prepared to this episode.
So it is 2 days before a gig. I've got my days packed with clients and kids stuff and all these different things. And and John is saying, "Do you have a Harry Potter costume?" I'm like, "That's a no. I don't have a Harry Potter costume on
in the back
hand."
Of my car.
I know, right? So, but then I started to think about it, and I was like, I know I used to have ages ago this pleated wool skirt, and I used to have this button down white shirt. I guarantee you I gave both those things away though. My husband possibly has a tie that's sort of close because I want to go buy a bunch of stuff. That's right. Just wasteful. And I've been trying to buy less clothes anyway. And so
I think it's really the scarf that you need.
Yeah. Okay. Whatever. I didn't end up with a scarf, but don't get me off the topic here. Anyway, to make a very, very, very long story short, on a whim, because I either needed to check then and then go off or I didn't know when I was going to get to it. And so I go down because I go looking for these things and I'm like, I'm sure I gave these things away. I know I did. I packed them all up, but I go downstairs to check and we just happen to still have this box. And I know I've given away things since then. So I don't know how it was I still had this box for giveaway that had the skirt I wanted and also this shirt that I wanted that I was giving away because I never wore them. And so within, I'm not kidding, 11 minutes, I'm back upstairs with the shirt, the skirt, these tights and boots, this tie my husband had that's the tie that she wears, and something that could be made into a sweater, a sweater vest, the old sweatery thing that I could cut the arms, anyway, whatever, make this sweater vest. So I have a Hermione outfit, out of the blue. And I text John, I'm like, "You think this would do?" And he's like, "My God, how did you come up with that out of the blue?" So very funny. He decides to dress as Dumbledore. And so I we have costumes for the thing. So here's the reason I wanted to bring it up, because this is an ongoing battle in my own head. And I think it has some relevance. I hope. Otherwise, you will just heard my Hermione story and then we'll talk about something else. Okay. Which is this balance between keeping things, i.e. hoarding, whether they're actually things or products that you sell or who knows what, those desk organizers that you have, things that you've decided you don't get rid of, but there's that tiny part of me who's always but what if I need it someday and then I don't have it? And so, if I need it, well, I know where it is even. No, I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of it. Because I have been very motivated to just keep decluttering in an almost maniacal way here at the house. But then there are those moments where, what if you need a Hermione outfit? on the
Right.
fly.
As you do.
As you do. Again, I mean, it's a ridiculous circumstance. So it's not, it's maybe the perfect example though, because there are those times where end up being super grateful that I didn't get rid of something or donate it or give it away because I had it. But then I also get frustrated because we have so much stuff around the house. And that metaphor of clutter and just stuff in general, I think is a really rich metaphor for lots of other things. And that balancing act of, I mean, my dad, his entire career was in supply chain management. So we were always hearing about like just-in-time inventory and Kanban inventory and all that stuff. So that concept of always have exactly what you need, but nothing extra is a bit of a nirvana, but I don't know how that works. So.
Well, for us, it boils down to process.
I thought you were going to say legal pads. Do we have enough legal pads or not?
No, we have pads of paper, but we don't really have legal size.
Oh, really? You don't do legal size paper anymore? I thought you were like legally obligated.
Legal size was the first to go because most of the file drawers are really built for files and letter size and stuff like that.
Yep.
But our process shows a hoarding mentality in one respect, and then we actually have a hoarding mentality in the other. So for the things, as you know, we're hiring a secretary. And so we've had some applicants here for interviews, and I've given tours around. And on one of those tours, we went to the back conference room, and the person said, "Oh," and I was like looking at the direction that she was looking in with that surprise. And she was looking at 2 shelves of law books that we have. Law books are where the case law is. Mm-hmm. And I understood why she was surprised, because we used to have a whole library and I got rid of most of them. But we still have.
Did you just decide which law? You're like, I don't care about those laws. I'm only going to.
Yes, I don't care. The only laws that we specialize in are really M to Z. It's a niche.
Sorry, that's an L law.
It hasn't served us well. Actually, it really hasn't. But for some reason, I never got rid of those. And anyway, so there are certain things, and of course, those law books are sitting right next to our typewriter, which is across the room from our fax machine. But
do you still have a typewriter?
Yes, we do still have a typewriter.
Yep.
But the typewriter,
because if you need a typewriter, you really need a typewriter.
You do, and we have a typewriter because the district court is a much bigger hoarder in terms of process than anybody else would be. And so until recently, they had forms in triplicate.
Oh, right.
You needed that stuff. But in terms of process, our evolution was we put everything, obviously everything we could virtual. But for a long time, we weren't making copies of anything. We would scan in mail and then get rid of it. And everything was fine, except when we opened a file, we would still have a hard copy manila folder. We had a drawer full of hard copy manila folders with a label on it, Jones and the client number.
You'd go ahead and make the folder and never put anything in it?
Nothing in it. Nothing.
But you made the folder.
One of our assistants made the folder. And
hysterical.
For a while, I didn't even think about it until one day I opened a drawer because it said open files, and I saw all of these things with labels on them, and there's no paper. And I said to my secretary at the time, why are we doing this? And her response, and this is the point, was, we have to have a file. We have to have a file.
Because the file police come in and see if we have a file.
It's on the computer. You can get to their document management system, or everything's virtual. No, we have to have a file. You have to be able to pull the file. And it was one of those circular conversations that I decided I didn't have the mental bandwidth to deal with right then, and I would come back to it. But I do think that a lot of organizations do hoard in terms of hanging on to long since outdated and unused processes.
For sure. Processes, and also information. Like when I did get rid of my office, I really didn't want to bring home anything that I didn't need to bring home. So I dug deep in my decluttering, and I had this, once I sort of made this decision, it was easy to get rid of the whole box. I did go through it just in case there was something really exceptional in there, but I had an entire banker's box of articles that I had saved, and really good articles. I mean, they're really important. They're really, they were good concepts. They were things that I learned from. But the fact of the matter is, even if I had even if the best leadership articles on the planet were in that box, I didn't even know they were in there. And if I needed something, I wouldn't go to that box to look for it. I'd Google it and get new ones. And so I did get rid of all of them. But I see that same behavior with email sometimes, where I want to just delete a bunch of things. And then I'm like, oh, but what if there's something in that newsletter that I need at some point, as if I'm going to go there to look for it. I just don't. But there is something about holding, like being afraid of not having what you need. And it can lead to having too much stuff. But then there's a problem with having too much stuff.
Well, let me just say this. You are talking to somebody who, and I'm looking at my other monitor, at my inbox for Outlook. My inbox has 64,302 items in it. I've gone to the seminars. I've heard all this stuff about the goal of having 0 in your inbox and clear it out. I don't clear out my inbox, and I've searched it, and I've gone back. Oh, they contacted us in 2017. Here's the email. I know there are other systems.
There is. I don't subscribe to 0 inbox. I do subscribe to an absolutely under 100. And if I am and I feel at peace if it's under like 30, I feel mostly at peace if it's under like 50. If it's edging towards 100, I start to get a little like, and I try and click, because there's usually not things in there that are that actually need to be in there. I try to keep my inbox just things that need some kind of attention. And just recently I got from 97 down to 35, because however many that was, they weren't action items. They were decisions I needed to make. And I made a decisions folder and I put them in there, and that got my action items down to action items. And now I'm going through the decisions, because the action item is not register for this thing. It's, do I want to go to that thing or not? And if so, then I need to register. But first, I hadn't clicked the button to register because I don't know for sure I want to go or not.
So for any of our listeners, by the way, if you want to, because I just want to point out, Jody has handed you the keys to her mental well-being. So if you would like to
completely mess with her,
take control of how Jody feels in any one day, feel free to send her 85 separate emails.
I will just delete them all. But
well, yeah, but for a while you'd see your number go up to 102.
Yeah, no, I had a mild panic. The reason I went and did it was because of the sane later or the sane box thing that I use that keeps the majority. That's the other thing too, as I use this thing called sane box. That by the way, I'm not saying this to like affiliate program them, but if somebody were going to check it out, let me send you my little code, because I get free months and you get free months. But it is the one thing that I pay for email wise. And I swear sometimes they turn it off for like a day just so that you don't forget how much it is so worth the $5 a month that it is to like scrape all your stuff into a different folder. Because I really only get for reals emails in my inbox, and all the newsletters and all that other stuff goes into this other folder. And it's really good at it. It learns very well. But one of the things it does is, if in that other folder, the sane later folder, they call it, if I move something to my inbox rather than just star it, which sometimes I forget, it thinks I want to see everything from that sender, versus I just want this email because it's a special sale from Kohl's or something that I want to, and I had moved something instead of it. So every email in there like swathed over. So all of a sudden I had like 700 emails in my inbox. I was like, oh no. But anyway.
But
so, yes.
I will tell you something on a hoarding thing that's going to come back. And I'm already struggling with this, and I've got 2 years to worry about it. And that is on commercial space.
Oh,
my lease isn't up until the end of 2024.
Yep.
I know because, at least 2 days a week, on Monday and Friday, I'm the only one in the office. People are working virtually, and we've gotten really good at that, as most businesses have, or certainly service businesses. But there's something about the way I always, irrationally perhaps, but I always associated the amount of space that we needed with some degree of commercial success and longevity.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
And I'm looking at our space, and I know rationally we could cut it in half. Mm-hmm. But I'd be lying if I said that part of me didn't think that taking only half the space in a new lease or whatever wouldn't be associated with a failed business enterprise or a failing business or going backwards or something like that. And that's a hard decision.
It is, even when, as you do, you recognize the like psychological hook of it versus reality or like numbers. And I am curious, are you concerned that you will suddenly want to buy like a really big truck with giant tires?
I've always wanted to buy a really big truck.
No, you haven't. Are you serious?
No.
Okay, I didn't think
as
so.
a matter of fact,
my
first real argument with Nikki was when she was moving across the country and she didn't have a vehicle and she bought a truck and I started laughing. She bought a pickup truck. Huh. And I just started laughing because in my experience, in my world, nobody I knew ever bought a pickup truck. And
we had a pickup truck as a kid, but
she was very insulted because it was elitist. She thought it was elitist, which of course it was.
It was.
But anyway, no, I think that, if you say to somebody, if you say to a landlord, we're going to need the entire third floor, right, you're a success. If you say to a landlord, you know what, we could probably take the scraps that you have left over from other tenants and just kind of cobble it together because we only need 1,500 square feet or whatever.
Certainly but let's take a look at that for a second. The sentences you chose certainly do, like, you just wrote a narrative about those two things.
Correct.
In the sentences that you said of them.
That's exactly right. Because having this stuff, in this case, square footage, but it could be other things, has nothing to do with utility or success or value or service or any of the things that I actually value in building the firm, but it does have a psychological weight attached to it.
Well, I'll make another bit of a leap of correlation, and it sort of almost flips it around the other way. But the same thing kind of happens when you think about pricing models, in that, if so many of them are done on an hourly basis, that's going to take me 5 hours to work with you on that. And, you and I have talked about this a ton. I remember reading that article. It was actually a lawyer. And the guy was like, look, if I can solve your problem in a half an hour, you should probably pay me even more than if it takes 5 hours. Cause that's just, so there is a real trap of quantity equating to value. I think there's a trap of fearing having what you don't need. Fearing not having what you do need. That's interesting. I said that completely backwards, I think. If I need it later, or if I get rid of a bunch of stuff and then I have to go buy more. That's the other thing too, is the whole like not being wasteful really creates a bit of a circular reference sometimes. Notwithstanding, for many of these examples I'm giving, there are, I could have borrowed clothes from a friend and not gone and bought more. So, there was always that option. That's why I love the options that are popping up in a lot of places of tool banks, like power tool banks. Like, do I really need every power tool there is, or a log splitter? You do need a log splitter every now and then, depending on where you live, and you probably don't need one 365. So to either rent one, or the tool libraries where you can borrow things or go use them, is a really cool concept. But that's not really the point here, is how you decide what you keep and then what you can get by without. And when does not having it become more of a problem than having it around and at the ready?
Well, I mean, that's the whole thing. We had a storage unit for years. We had a storage unit when we were in the townhouse. We had a storage unit for years. And I kept saying to Nikki that with the money we paid for the storage unit, we could have bought everything new,
right?
Over and over again. But then storage units make their money off of this whole psychological, it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
Yeah. And really funny, because for a lot of things, I tend to be a little bit more the hoarder between my husband and I, sort of. I go back and forth on certain things. But that potential of a storage unit has been a bone of contention between us for years, because he really wants to get one. And I'm like, no, not until we have gone through the closets in the guest room and the shed, the indoor outdoor storage that's like below our bedroom. If we go through all that and get rid of everything we don't need and still need storage, then I will have that conversation. But I don't let's get rid of the things we don't need first. We do not need a storage unit. And that is like a hard line I draw on that, especially because there are people who can use things, but that's not really the point of this. But
yeah, but I do think, the whole notion of spring cleaning, for example, I always liked that, because very often you don't take it upon yourself to examine what you're holding on to and then decide you're going to get rid of it. But if you have this deadline, okay, when the clocks fall back or whatever it is, we're going to do a spring cleaning, and that's the time we're going to take a hard look at that. And I find that in business, we don't have that hard line. There's not even like a cliche spring cleaning.
That's interesting. So at the architecture firm, and I know they still do this because Paul's still there, and they about a month ago they had that day. Once or sometimes twice a year, there is a day where everybody cleans up their space. Groups of people go through the admin areas and the plotter room, and it's getting rid of stuff that isn't needed. It's making sure there are things, if you do need, that they get ordered, all that kind. It is kind of a reset tidying. And I think there is something about that, though. Part of why it works, and I think this is another thread in here, is that for some things, the decisions, you need both people there to validate that it really can be gotten rid of. It can go. And whereas if you're like, oh, I don't know what this flim flamsel thing I just found in the shed is, it might be an irreplaceable part to the lawnmower or something. So I'll just set it over there. Versus if Paul and I are both there, or at his office, if the people are all there and they're like, oh, no, those were files from things we don't need anymore. So those can all go.
Well, yeah, but until you get to the point where you look at something, neither one of you knows what it is. And you're like, well, we better keep it, find out. But
occasionally we're like, that looks important and hard to replace.
But it's not just things. I keep getting back to processes. And, even things like, and I have a joke with clients when I'm sent a contract to review. In other words, somebody sent it to my client sends it to me, right? So we're looking at somebody else's contract. And the first place I'll always look is the notice provision, because if the notice provision says that you can notify people by fax, I know they haven't really looked at the contract since 1987. It's one of these legacy things. They never actually went through. And it tells me a lot about their familiarity with the contract that they've actually sent. And more often than not, that's the response that we get. Yeah, we haven't, this was pieced together. We haven't really looked at this in a while. And people are generally a lot more receptive to negotiating changes when they have to concede that they really haven't taken a hard look at it either. And they can't explain certain things. So to me, the hoarding is not just the things, whether it's in business, the typewriter and the fax machine and the law books or whatever. And it's not just the processes, but it's also the actual paperwork or the, your voicemail system, or what people hear on the phone, or how you reach out to clients, or how you get paid.
Yeah. Or what files you keep about people. It's really funny. I don't really have a need to keep client files. I keep them, or I kept them for quite a while because of almost, like nostalgia reasons. It's actually not unlike your office. I liked being able to go back and like, oh, look at these people. And some of them I'd kind of forgotten about until I saw their name again. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot I worked with that person. And so there was some, I don't know, probably some like legitimacy to being able to look back through them or something, but I had no need for them. I could have just made a list of who they were and then tossed all the files. So two things in this. One thing that does work for me in getting rid of stuff or cleaning, at least on the items and like actual things you're keeping, is the only thing that gets my brain in the right space is I pretend that I'm moving, or like when I was leaving my office, I actually was moving, because that is the one circumstance by which I will be a vicious get rid of things. Because if I keep it, I have to box it and move it and and theoretically unpack it, although sometimes it doesn't happen. And my want to minimize that is stronger than my fear of not having a thing if I need it. And I can be pretty vicious about it. But I got rid of all these client files that I just didn't need. They were from like 15 years ago, but hysterically, or 12 years ago, Paul was telling me they had to interview with this guy, and they named the name. I'm like, that sounds familiar. I was like, I feel like I know that name. And so I tried to search through emails. My emails don't go back that far. And I was like, what was it? And so I finally started Googling, and I was like, I think that was a client of mine, but I didn't have any files to go back to find. And like, it's still bugging me, because I'm like, I'm pretty sure that was this guy, and I have this like fuzzy focus of what he looked like and like what we talked about, but I have no way to validate it. And it may haunt me forever, but I'm going to try and get over it.
Well, but I'll tell you, the reason you can't find it in email is because you top out at 100. If you hit my level of 64,302, probably wouldn't be bugging you so much.
Oh, so here's like, we can just like, tease apart our levels of this. I don't delete them, like, because I'm Google Apps, I can archive them. So they're still there if I need them. I can still go find them. They're just not in my line of sight. But that is, for me, that's an important, so much so that if ever I can't, I don't have the time, like if it's gotten up into like the hundreds or even like 1,000 or something, I don't have that's ridiculous to go through all of them and try and meaningfully get them down. So in those cases, what I will do is I will create a folder called like a time frame, and I'll just put all of them in there. So they're not in with everything else, with things I have already gotten rid of, but it's like, if I need them, they're in this. And then after a certain amount of time, I'm like, okay, there wasn't anything super important in there. And then I put them back in with everything else, but it's like a little corral for the time being.
So I guess as we wrap up, my pressing question is, where's the Hermione outfit now, and what is its fate?
So it has been disassembled and put back where it goes, and they're going to Goodwill, as soon. I will not have an on-demand Hermione outfit any longer.
Ellicott City will be much the poorer.
So that's our story.
But the discussion doesn't have to end here.
No, it does not.
In fact, we don't want it to.
No, we don't.
That is why we actually have our private Facebook group,
which we started to make sure that we could get your comments, your rants, your thoughts,
your stories.
Your stories.
You can find links to that group, as well as show notes and links to subscribe via email, and how to find us just about anywhere you can possibly find podcasts at sohere'smystory.com.
And you can also find us on Facebook and Twitter at SHMS Podcast.
And since we know it takes a village.
Yes, it does.
We'd like to thank our village, our super talented, incredibly patient team.
And occasionally snarky team.
Yeah, but in the best of ways.
In the best of ways.
Snarky.
Yes.
Good mockery.
So a huge shout out to the people who actually help us produce our show. First, our sound engineer, Tom Hansen.
Thanks to Christy Schmier for our brilliant show notes and all the other fantastic writing she does for us.
And to Taylor Mathauer for doing just a little bit of everything.
Including wrangling us.
Which
is no small feat.
No, it's not.
This is Jody Hume.
And I'm Elliot Wagenheim.
And you've been listening to So Here's My Story.